Welcome to the PaleyFest Fall TV Previews. I'm Jenelle Riley, Deputy Awards and Features Editor at Variety, and I'm delighted to be your host for this special conversation celebrating Peacock's A Friend of the Family. And thanks to Citi, the festival's official card and official sponsor, for their help making this program possible. Joining us are executive producer, writer, and showrunner Nick Antosca, producer Jan Broberg, Jake Lacy, who plays Robert B. Berchtold, Lio Tipton, who plays Gail Berchtold, and Mckenna Grace, who plays Jan Broberg in her older years. Welcome to everyone watching. Let's start our program. Thank you all so much for being here. Congratulations on a riveting new series. I'd like to start with Jan, because obviously this story begins with you. You've told your story before, but never in a dramatized series like this. What compelled you to want to tell it this way, and what convinced you that Nick was the right person for it?
From the first time that I talked to Nick, he asked me how my family was doing. He understood immediately that this is a story that involves an entire family who are real human beings. And I knew that he would have the care and the ability to layer the story in a way that is so human and so not only intriguing, but relatable. And for me to tell that story over time, being that my whole goal in sharing my story for 32 years is that I want people to understand that it affects most families. There's somebody that you know that has been affected by this kind of abuse, this kind of grooming, this kind of manipulation. And I think it's important we start sharing those stories. It's not a scary stranger. That was obvious the first time I talked to Nick, that he understood that the grooming was happening to the entire family, not just to me, not just to the child. That was amazing and important for me. So that's why.
And Nick, you've had great success bringing, true stories to the screen before. When did you sort of learn about Jan's story, and how long have you been wanting to tell it this way?
So I learned about the story from the documentary and by reading Jan and her mom's book, and they stuck in my head. It's a haunting story. And I felt like that there was more to understand and explore about the experience. It's very, very hard to convey an experience like this, which was a slow burn that took place over years, in 90 minutes or something like that, because the big events of the story are so shocking and so overwhelming. But you have to live in the texture and fullness of the family's life and understand them as human beings. It felt like to really understand what they went through, you need to be immersed in it psychologically and emotionally. So I hope that the audience comes away from the series with an immersive and empathetic experience, and with an understanding of how the family fell prey to such sophisticated and relentless manipulation tactics. And of course, being able to work on it in partnership with Jan is particularly meaningful and essential.
And for the actors, I'm curious how much you knew or thought you knew going into this project, because I thought I knew this story, and it turns out there's a lot I didn't know. Can you sort of talk about how the project came to you and what interested you in taking on these roles? And let's start with Mckenna, because obviously this is such a complex and challenging role.
Well, whenever I first met with Nick and everyone, they brought me the scripts and I read them, and I was shooting in Toronto at the time, and I had like early call times every day, but every night I would like stay up reading the scripts because I couldn't believe what I was reading. And I just was immediately hooked. I was like, I couldn't, I don't know, get the story out of my mind. And I was so excited to hop on Zoom with them and just hear them talk about the project and explain it to me. I watched the documentary. I've seen it so many times now. I've read your book, Jan. I've read like both of the books, and I don't know, every single time I read a new script or I read one of the books or I watch the documentary, there's something new, like a new detail or something that I learn, and it's all just so shocking. Though for me, it was really dependent on Miss Jan, how like into this you were, if you were collaborating with this, or if this was being made, just telling your story. And the fact that you are so involved and that we're being able to tell your story with you was entirely a part of the biggest part of my decision. And coming on to this. And it's just so, I don't know, it's really exciting to be able to collaborate with you, Jan, and telling your story. And I'm honored to be a part of it.
It is amazing. At the same time, is it a little bit intimidating to have the person you're playing there, or is it all good because you can ask her literally anything?
Okay, I mean, playing a real person is always scary because I want to make sure that I am telling your story right. I want to make sure that I'm not doing anything that you dislike, or make sure that this is being told in a light that you want. But honestly, I feel like I couldn't be working with a better person because I can just message you, I can call you, I can ask anything, and I don't feel nervous. And that means a lot. That means a lot. It's definitely scary telling stories, especially stories like this, or stories that are real people. But I'm honored to be working with Jan because she's just so open with me, and I really, really appreciate that.
I'm going to digress just for a second because you're in boxes next to each other, and I actually can't get over how much you look alike. You're even wearing the same shade in some ways. And I'm curious for Nick and Jan. I mean, I'm very familiar with Mckenna's work. She's obviously brilliant, but what sort of made you think of her for this role, and how did you know she was your Jan?
I really think Nick has to answer that, but can I just interject that I could not, now that I know Mckenna and we are dear friends forever. I've been wearing a sweet necklace of 2 hearts that she gave me. I want you to know that there is not a better cast that we could have had. There is so much serendipity and grace in the cast and their hearts, and being in the right place, wanting to tell the story fully in the right way so that the most people could relate to it and understand and maybe see something that we missed. Now I'll let Nick answer your question.
I can't top that answer. I mean, it's really simple. You know, it was the work and talking to Mckenna. I'd seen her work. I'd seen her in Handmaids. I'd seen her in Ghostbusters, as well as a number of other things. But McKenna's just an incredible actress. And we looked for a long, long, long time to find the right people to play young Jan and older Jan. And McKenna only became available at a certain point after we had exhausted we reached out at the beginning and she was unavailable. Then she became available. We were like, oh my God, this is perfect. This is meant to be. So we were overjoyed when McKenna read the scripts and came on board.
Jake, for you, I've never seen you in a role like this before. What interested you in being part of this project, and did you have any concerns about playing this character?
To echo a bit of what McKenna said, the 2 real contributing factors were Jan and Marianne being a part of this on a producing level, creatively involved, and knowing that this wasn't a sort of like, we're taking your story and doing what we want with it, but in saying that like you have the power to tell this story as you'd like it to be told. And then also, being a fan of and aware of like the quality of work that Nick has done in the past, and Eliza, who directed the first block of episodes, and feeling like that those 2 elements together felt like a safe thing to come into, that you didn't think like, oh, this is going to be a sort of ham-fisted attempt to tell a story of a person who doesn't want to be involved in this. You think like, why would you do that? Why would you make that? And then why would you want to be a part of it? And so this being the opposite of that was intriguing. And I didn't really have any hesitation in doing this, to be honest. I feel like after I had gotten the job and was telling people what I was going to work on, they were like, oh, you want to, that's what you want to do? And I was like, yeah, yes. Like it didn't occur to me to be like, oh, how am I perceived? Like that, I just don't have an interest in that, having to think that way. And, and really like the very freeing thing, I think, again, comes back to really like to Nick and to Jan, is like the quality of the writing is so nuanced and layered and specific, and that it always feels like I have something to lean on, to scratch deeper at, to, that it's all coming from somewhere, that it isn't written with a kind of judgment or a weird veneer on it that isn't accessing these characters as people. And the final piece in this rambling answer is that Jan left me a really incredible letter on the first day of production, talking a little bit about Berchtold and also essentially saying, like, go forth, like this was his superpower, was this like warmth and charm and storytelling and charisma, and but like, to not just read you the whole letter, but essentially Jan was like, I'm in a good spot. You can do this work as this work. You don't need to be attached to like, how is this affecting the people involved? Like, we've moved through that, and the telling of this story is part of that. And so you can tell this character and story fully. And to have her support and blessing from then straight through has basically been the key to feeling like I can then go into this world in a like free, creative, fulfilling way. So that's 3 answers to one question.
No.
But
and I have another question for you, so prepare a fourth. Okay. No, I just wanted to say that it'd be very easy to make this person a cardboard villain, and you make them so complex and 3-dimensional. I'm really just sort of curious about what other research you were able to take on, since a lot of times we don't get to know a lot about the victimizer.
Yeah, so it's a mix of things. Nick and the team had just access to an incredible amount of information from Jan, from Marianne, from their personal experience, from court documents, all these things. And Nick would dole out bits of that to me to be like, I think you should read this and maybe not read this, honestly, so as to not lead me down a path that really more than you might be inclined to be, judge this character as you're trying to also be this character. And so there's some element of that. And in preparation, some element of understanding on a clinical level what a manipulative, most likely psychopathic predator, what is happening here that leads them to this, and how does that affect their worldview, not just to this victim or to the victims, but to the people in their lives, to the people in the victims' lives, to their place in society. How do they see themselves? Like, to try to build that out in a way that isn't singular in focus. And at some point to let that go, like you show up with all of this, like, jumbling around in your mind, and then at some point have to like stop spinning the hopper and just like hope that it comes through. And the last piece to that was like, there's a couple of scenes where I was like, there's a scene in particular with Marianne, with Anna, and I'm pivoting from like attempt to try and pull her back into my orbit and control. And it felt so ungrounded in a way, because I was having a hard time finding the through line from like one, pivot to the next. And Nick and Rachel, who was directing this episode, had to be like, you're looking for the humanity, like, through these choices. And there's not a lot of humanity in those choices. The reality is that it's not connected into like, well, he feels this way, so there are times where like it is going to be disconnected from your desire as like an empathetic human. It's not going to line up because that wavelength wasn't there for him in ways. So like finding some creative performance acceptance in that as well, to go like, this isn't, my tools aren't always translating to Berchtold's tools, like that that kind of finding an acceptance in that. So again, that's a long one, but that was some part of how we got there as a team, I think.
And Lio, for you, I am so interested in, I keep saying character, although I know these are people, but for the sake of this, we'll say character. Gail is someone who I really felt I knew nothing about. And to get an insight into her in this and to sort of understand her was so intriguing. What did you know about her and or this story when it found its way to you? And did it surprise you?
Well, the story is very surprising in general. Yes, definitely. But Gail, honestly, I did not know much about Gail at all. Like the other actors, Nick passed really helpful things. I hadn't even seen a photo of her. I think they had one in the hanging in wardrobe. But really, I approached her because I didn't have anyone to fully try to get their isms, and she kind of is a mysterious character in this. I really tried to kind of use that and bounce off the other characters for shaping her to what she needed to be, which is something I think that she might have done as a human in general. She's kind of, that fly against the wall. And I really tried to infuse all of her scenes and build her character, honestly, around how others are interacting with her and how she needed to be. And that was just fascinating and very difficult, I found, because I think my instinct, and I'm sure that Jake had this a lot, is why I wanted to run. It was like a fleeing instinct. When everything in my gut in a scene said red flag, for Gail, I had one point that I focused everything to, and that was my children and my family. And so with every decision, with every maybe confusing thing that Gail did or confusing choice that I made, everything was back to my kids. And that's the most human thing I could relate to with her, since she, as a real person, felt so distant. Yeah.
I mean, this is obviously very complex material. It's a very challenging role. I'm curious, as an actor, is it ever hard for you? Like, are there evenings you go home and you want to shake this character, but maybe you can't?
Yes. And I did so, actually. I would go home and write songs. I have like 4 or 5 songs written from Gail's perspective. About the show, about my boys, and then I have like kind of a funny one when we first got there about the family going to the picnic together. And it would be my way to, one, get into Gail's head, because just needed something loving. I had to figure out a way to love B, and really love him and need him to love me back. So I really had to kind of do that background of emotional attachment. And I did that through song, because that was, to me, the safest music. To me, that was the safest way to be able to like store it in a bottle. And I could kind of return to it when I needed that reminder and get into that headspace. But it kept it nice and separate for me.
Jan, what do you hope resonates most with audiences as they watch this show?
That could be me. That could be you. And it most likely has been. And if you don't know it yet, at some point in a future date, you will find out that someone you know, you may be loved or trusted, harmed somebody that you truly love, and you didn't know it then. So if you can see it through these characters' experience, maybe then you'll see the tiny little red flags are only in hindsight. Good parents, loving families, wonderful neighborhoods, communities. All those people loved this man, his wife, and family. I loved Gail. She taught me how to do ceramics and how to make a certain kind of chocolate chip cookie that I still make today. We still have recipes in our recipe card that say Gail Birchtold. And when it's that close, it's hard to see. That's what I hope is relatable with the audience, and in doing a series with 9 episodes with fully vetted, fully layered human beings as we were, that people will relate and they might see something that they otherwise wouldn't have.
I mean, also very core to this story is the strength and resilience of Jan and her family. And you have such an amazing cast to portray this close-knit family. I'd love to ask Nick about cast. I didn't even realize it was Colin Hanks for a half hour. It took me the longest time. But casting Colin Hanks and Anna Paquin, and also Mckenna, about working with them and how you became, you portray this close-knit family so well, if that bond sort of came naturally, or you spent time together to build it. But let's start with Nick.
Yeah, I mean, the casting process on this show was very, very, very delicate and very difficult, because it was so important to find people who could bring the depth and complexity of real human beings. And Jan is there. So you ask the actors, like, if it's intimidating, like, it's a scary thing from a writing and producing perspective. There's a sense of responsibility, but also a confidence, like what Jake was saying. Jan had told us, me and Eliza, and all the writers early on, you just have to remember how charming and how much you want to be in this person's presence and how much you believe him. And then after we met with Jake the first time, it was like, okay, we found him. Like, that's, you're in this guy's presence, like, you believe him, you just trust. And there was a process like that with everybody in this cast. Everybody in this cast has to bring an incredible depth and sensitivity, and humanity, as well as like a level of craft. It was a very scary process, because we were depending so much on this cast and everybody, Anna, Colin, Mckenna, Hendrix, Lio, Jake, like Austin Stowell, who plays Pete, the FBI agent. Everybody brought it, and they can speak to their processes and how they bonded. And Lio, I didn't know that about the songs. That's amazing.
I sent them to you.
But from the outside, at least, just watching chemistry happen and humanity kind of be evoked on set, it was really powerful. And I'm tremendously grateful to the cast for the work they did, because it's not easy material, it's not easy characters, and I'm just tremendously proud and grateful.
And Mckenna, for you, I imagine it's pretty easy to bond with Colin Hanks and Anna Paquin as people, but presenting that familial bond, did that come pretty naturally?
I mean, it was, coming onto the show is scary. Playing Jan, a real person, that's scary. But then it's also scary because I am playing older Jan. I come in later into the episodes. So these guys have been here since like February, and I'm coming in months after shooting, and I'm scared. I'm like, will I be like out of place here? And it was the first week I didn't go to work. I was just like getting fittings done and like wig fittings and stuff. And I was just like so nervous to come to set that first day to start work on this, which I'm so excited to be a part of. But like, will it be weird? Am I coming in months after the fact, and is nobody gonna like me or something? I don't know. But then coming onto set, and everybody just makes this set feel really like home. And so it's nice. I feel really comfortable and at home with everyone on this set. So it was really lovely being able to come in and fit right in with all of that.
Our next question is for Nick, and it comes from festival sponsor City. Adapting true family stories to a series format can present its own unique set of challenges. However, in this case, you had the privilege of working with the real-life person whose story you're depicting. How did working with Jan inform your approach to the project?
Yeah. Well, like we were talking about before, working with Jan was incredible and essential. It gave us both a sense of responsibility, and it gave us that confidence that we were going down the right road when we made a choice with her blessing and input. And yeah, I mean, I know the cast can speak to this even better than I can, but there is something very scary about plunging into a true story that is so complicated and so sensitive, and it just meant the world to be able to reach out to Jan. And this began in the writer's room, because she would come into the writer's room, and even before the writer's room, we have all these transcripts of conversations that we had starting, I don't know, like 2 years ago. And we just have these long conversations, and I would say, like, what music did you guys listen to? Like ABBA, and, you know, and just getting the flavor of their lives, the flavor of the family's lives was as essential as getting the details of how it felt during some terribly traumatic moment or during a kidnapping. Like, just knowing what the understanding the fullness of their lives and the texture of their lives was so essential. You know, would Bob have said this or that, or what jokes was he telling? So anyway, that was a long answer, but it was tremendously meaningful.
At this point, we're actually going to welcome actor Hendrix Yancey, who plays young Jan, to join us for a couple questions. Hi. Hi, Hendrix.
Hi.
Hi, congratulations on your wonderful performance in the show. I know you share the role of Jan with Mckenna, and I believe the two of you got to know each other. What was it like working with her, and what sort of talks did you have about playing Jan?
It was just amazing to get to meet Mckenna. Now we're like so close, and like I text her like every day basically. And it was just amazing to get to work with her. She's such a nice person. I love her so much. She's basically like my big sister, since I don't have any sisters. But so since I played the younger version and she played like the older me, we kind of like put our heads together and like went over how I would pray, and I'd pray like this. And like we went over how a ton of other stuff like that. And so we wanted to like make both of our characters look like the same as much as we could, because she plays older me and I play younger her. So it was just really fun.
I tried to learn how to master my Hendrix smile.
Well, you know, it's interesting because Mckenna also started at such a young age. I mean, not that you're old now, I apologize, but you started acting at a very young age. Did you ever ask her for advice?
Not really. I mean, I think I did once. I just can't remember what for.
She's just too pro, you know.
So long ago. I haven't seen her in like a month. We went on vacation together, but we haven't seen each other on set in so long, because I got a little break for a little while and she had to film. So we haven't really seen each other in person. But
Hendrix, I know you also got to speak with Jan herself. What did you sort of want to ask her, or what did she tell you about playing this role?
So when I first met her, I immediately felt like a connection, because Miss Jan is just so nice, and she's just a really lovable person. I love Miss Jan so much, and she's so nice. And so when I first met her, she told me about how much I reminded her of her like younger self. And she told me about how we had the same energy, and I kind of felt it too, because like we immediately had like a connection. Like I just had like the same energy as her and everything else. And then she helped me on a couple of scenes. So like she helped me in the scene where I'm tied down, and she helped me, like she told me how much she was like scared and how she was doing it for her family and how much she loved her family so much and her sisters. And she said she's still best friends with her sisters to this day.
I'm sorry, it's just so fascinating seeing the three of you together. It must be strange for you, Jan. Yeah.
Oh, I adored both of them so much.
Oh, that's so fantastic. Well, again, I want to thank you all so much for joining us today to learn more about A Friend of the Family. Make sure to watch the True Crime Limited drama series on Peacock starting October 6th. And again, congratulations on really, really a beautiful show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.